back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. Got the whole crew with us this week. I'm your host, Jordan Hill, Rusty Mansell, and Kip Adams. We are all here because the countdown is on. We are 1 day away from spring practice opening. It's going to be a busy few weeks as we continue watching Georgia as they get ready for G-Day on April 15th. Rusty, coming off a vacation, I was kind of hoping you're going to be tan and looking nice, but how was the vacation? Get a little bit of a break.
Well, fortunately, I had tickets from a buddy of mine. We were in a suite, so I stayed in the shade and hydrated and watched people hit golf balls into 17 at Sawgrass, so that was nice. But you see that course and you realize why it gives people problems on 17. It's literally you're in a bowl and the hole's not very big. And Wednesday was awesome because they make the caddies hit as well. And you could look at a caddy, and we were kind of dollar betting up there. I was like, there's no way this guy's hitting it on. And you could tell, and you could see the nerves in those guys. But that was a fun event. I saw some schools on the way down. I got a chance to see some schools, and obviously I couldn't pass that up for going through South Georgia. But you kind of look at it to unplug one last week, and knowing that basically from now until the end of June, before that next dead period for the month of July, almost, there's going to be a lot going on content wise for us. And then you start talking about recruiting and all those things. So it's kind of go time starting today.
No doubt about it. Kip, how is the day treating you before it's all hands on deck with spring ball opening tomorrow?
I'm looking back at Rusty's 12 seasons in Georgia, trying to figure out how we got the pollinating in before third winter came back. It flipped it a little bit. I saw the pollen on the front porch, thought, all right, actual spring's here. No, I think we hit like 59. We have a freeze warning for tonight. What on earth is going on?
Like the 7-day forecast is even more depressing. It's like 50 high. I mean, it's like I was 85 at last week on Tuesday in Florida. Man, I felt alive. And you get out of the car at Buc-ee's in Warner Robins, it's 50. You're like, what in the hell happened?
I got the fishing gear all set up last week. Yeah. I was like, I'm set, man, and now I'm freezing my butt off.
Be ice fishing tomorrow. You had to cut a hole in that lake.
You got it right. Hopefully it'll be here. Maybe it'll be here by the time we get a little bit of downtime, which won't be until mid-April once they're done with spring practice. We're having this podcast today as a mailbag episode for everyone who's got questions going into spring practice. It seems like the opportune time to answer some of those. We pulled a bunch from our board. I would tell everybody who is watching this live, drop any questions you've got in the comments, and we'll kind of toggle between questions from our board over at the Junkyard and also questions for the people watching live. So we're going to start with this one. I will throw this one to Kip, and it's from King George, who asked, which one of the early enrollees makes the biggest impact during the spring or G-Day? Rusty, who is someone, or if there are multiple people that you kind of got your eye on that you think can make some noise during spring?
Two ways to answer this, and I'll back it up, I guess, best both ways. Position of need is outside linebacker, and I think Damon Wilson's a guy, for all indications, from what I've heard, through the month of February, through workouts, some of the stuff they have done, he is kind of separated himself right now as a guy that there's open minutes there. It doesn't mean other people aren't performing. They just got experienced guys. I mean, if you're playing tackle right now, you're not getting in front of Marius Mims. Monroe Freeland is looking good, but right now he's going to be kind of behind some guys. But there's opportunity there at that outside linebacker position. Marvin Jones Jr. is not participating this spring. Chaz Chambliss is coming back, but you lose Nolan Smith and Robert Beal. So there's some spots there at those positions. And I think Damon Wilson's a guy he's the athlete we kind of thought he was. He's explosive. He's strong. There was a reason this thing was Georgia, Ohio State for several months, and both schools knew this guy was, he was a dude. And right now, if you want to talk about a guy that I think can help Georgia, I'm very interested in what he does this spring through some reps, put these pads on. But what I hear about Damon Wilson, this guy is creating some early buzz.
Kip, anybody that you're particularly interested in, someone that could wind up in the mix by the time we get to G-Day?
When we did our breakout performers, I look back now, and I actually don't think I picked an actual true freshman on my list, which Feels like I took the easy way out 6 times, but you gave me all those chances to build a really, really strong draft, and I think the voting kind of showed that over the next day. But looking back, I want to see AJ Harris. I think he's a guy that you look at that cornerback spot opposite of Kamari Lassiter. I chose Dalen Everett as my breakout candidate because I thought, he showed the most so far that he is positioned to just have an opportunity to earn that spot. But, they still have to go out there and compete. And we mentioned Nowlin Green as well. But I think AJ Harris is a guy that can come in and really, make some buzz for himself with a strong spring that could carry over into the fall. So I do think he is a guy that, can get out there and impress and really, make a name for himself over the summer. If not now, but heading into the fall, he's just a guy that I want to see out there and want to see kind of what he can do and what he brings to the table. Because just like Rusty said earlier, as far as Georgia's edge rushers they brought in, which they brought in 3 top 50 guys. They also brought in, several other 5-stars that we think are going to make an impact. And I think AJ Harris is just one of those guys that, if given the opportunity to earn some playing time, he's got the skill set that Kirby Smart's really looking for in that secondary.
I meant to mention this, Kip. You talked about the voting for what we did last week with our breakout teams. Team Kip won the vote, 51% to 49. I think there might have been some buying us some votes there.
Stop the count.
Stop the count. But hey, it honestly, I thought we came
Yep, I hadn't got my Starbucks card yet, by the way.
Yeah, that's in the mail.
Yeah. Hey, as the son of 2 postal workers, you just got to wait it out. It'll get there eventually.
That link got sent out to a lot of people. I text everyone I could on that one. It was too close for comfort there at the end.
I had an answer for this question. I wanted to get y'all's opinion. And the question is from Yo Pickle J, who says, which player stands the most to lose this spring? I thought this was a pretty interesting question. Not always how we sort of take this. And I think my answer would be Carson Beck, because it's presumed going into this that he is the QB1. I'm expecting, obviously, a competition. All 3 of those guys, Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff, Gunnar Stockton as well. I think my answer would be Carson because of how he is perceived going into this and how all 3 of those guys are going to be scrutinized, but him specifically. Kip, it seems like you agree with me. What do you think about that as Carson being the answer?
Yeah, when I saw that question, that was immediately what popped in my head that, they got 15 practices. We've kind of said all offseason we thought because of him being the number 2 last season, he's got that leg up going into this, but at the same time, it's a competition. And so there's 15 opportunities, if not, for the other quarterbacks on the roster to completely change our perception of this quarterback battle. So we could come out of spring saying, this looks like Brock Vandagriff's job to lose. Or Gunnar Stockton can go in there and show that his familiarity with Mike Bobo has paid off, and he looks like kind of a similar fit to what we saw in Stetson Bennett last year. So while Carson Beck's gotten the most opportunities and snaps so far, that could go out the window real quick if these other quarterbacks, go out there and shine, and maybe Carson struggles a little bit. So I agree with you. I think that's kind of where my eyes immediately went. I was like, this quarterback battle, anything can happen, and that's why we think it's one of those competitions that's probably going to go into the fall as well.
Rusty, your thoughts just on the quarterback situation on the whole as we get ready for spring?
That's a no-brainer. I think if you want to go maybe B or C to that, I would say Kendall Milton, because he's kind of waited his time. He's been he's had some injuries and those type of things. He seems healthy. Like, this is his time to really take that step forward and claim those minutes. Does he allow Branson Robinson? Does he allow, Dejon Edwards? Does he allow? Listen, I've heard some buzz out of this Roger Robinson, from the true fresh from California. So, at what point does he take those minutes and let everybody else fight for quote unquote scraps? Or does he open things up and allow some other guys to, continue to cut in those minutes? So no question, the quarterback battle with Carson Beck and those 3 guys. If you want to do like a little side note, kind of interested in Kendall Milton. Does he take that step forward now that he's healthy under a new offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo? So we'll see. That's one of the things that I'll be watching as well.
I think that's a fair point with Kendall. And, you look at the numbers, and obviously he didn't have quite as many carries as some of the other backs, but he wound up leading the SEC in yards per carry. And a big part of that, like I said, but he finished the year on a high note. And I think that's a good point to point out how he's able to do as a perceived number one back. Go to the next question from Dog Life 706. I'll throw this one to you, Kip. Who's most likely to emerge as an all-SEC player on offense and defense? Who are some of those guys? And to me, you can take this question as someone who has already contributed, but maybe can take a step forward in this upcoming season.
Well, I'll start on defense. Kamari Lassiter. I just think he's a guy that showed last season that, he's battle tested. When we talk about that, a couple of years in a row, Georgia's kind of had an established lockdown, if not just a CB1 out there. And then, the other quarterback out there would get targeted and tested by other teams because, they don't have any choice for most of the snaps. And early on in the season, you knew Kamari Lassiter wasn't backing down from any matchup. Regardless of who was lining up in front of him, he was ready to step up. And for the most part, I thought he played really, really strong out there, a stabilizing force in that secondary. And now coming back is someone they're really going to rely on. I think he might be that guy this year that we don't hear a lot about because, you have a new face in there as the other cornerback. And usually in those situations, it's because the other guy's playing at an all conference level. So I really think he's got, a chance to really step up and be a big time player. And, it's difficult on the offensive side. Without just going straight to quarterback and, trying not to pick, either of the transfers, it is tough because I think you got a deep wide receiver room now. And so, I'll go to the offensive line, and I think that, Amarius Mims, wherever he ends up starting, whether it's left or right tackle, I think Georgia's starting to kind of have a revolving door there where you have a guy that basically comes in and starts for one season and then goes off and is a high draft pick. They've had, several in a row now that have just really stood out there. With Broderick Jones now gone, Amarius Mims, whether it's left tackle, right tackle, I think he showed in the college football playoff. He's set up for a big, big season. And we already know that, the talent is there. What a big deal it was for Georgia to get him back out of that transfer portal last year. And I think he's kind of set up with an offensive line that we think is, basically returning 4 starters from the playoffs last year. I think it's going to be a strength of this entire football team. And I think he's just going to be given a chance to really shine and put up some really good film next season.
I think those are 2 good options. Rusty, anyone that stands out to you, guys that you think could be breakout players this year?
I don't know if it's breakout because he started last year, but I think Smile Munden is a guy he's just so fast and the game comes to him. Look at the sack. I think he had 2 sacks in the semifinal game against Ohio State. And I just think when you look at him, the game today is built for linebackers like him. He's only going to play faster because he's got another year under his belt. I agree with Kip 100% on Marius Mims. But I think Smile Munden, Craig Lawson here in our comments makes a very good pick in Malachi Starks. I think that's another guy that another year under his belt. He's elite size and those types of things. Can he make that jump? But if you look at that, I would say Smile Munden. Kamari Lassiter is the guy too that this didn't get enough attention last year, but he will in the preseason when people start digging into tape and those types of things and what they got coming back. But I would go with Marius Mims and Smile Munden.
I really like the Smile pick. He was initially who I thought of. Another name I'll throw out there, Michael Williams, having another year. I feel like he's got a chance to really, really shine there at defensive end.
Interesting what they're going to do with him. They're going to play him hand up. They're going to play him hand down. Can they do both with him? This is a young man that is ultra talented, and it's hard not to look at that rep and a couple of reps against Paris Johnson, who I think is an unbelievable football player and left tackle there for Ohio State. And, he kind of long-armed him, and that's hard to do. That tells you his reach because I've seen Paris Johnson in person, and, for a true freshman to long-arm a guy like that and basically put him on his back for a sack in that game, you got to be excited about Michael Williams.
Yeah, our guy Jordan Harris made sure to appreciate. He said we missed out on Michael. I was paying attention. I was taking notes there. But all right, we're going to take a quick break, come back, answer a few more questions before we wrap this thing up and turn our attention to Tuesday. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to put this one on a tee that we just got from Craig Lawson. He says, do y'all think Brock Bowers will be good in 2023?
I can take that one.
I'm going to go on a limb, and I'm going to say yes. I think he's going to be pretty good.
I think Craig's on vacation, and he's enjoying a beverage somewhere. And, Craig, you just keep doing what you do, man. Have a great Monday, Craig.
Oh, but still, it will be something to watch Brock. Now he's coming back as the Mackey Award winner, and I think there's no doubt he's going to put up another great season in his junior year. A little bit tougher than the one Craig just served up. Pantalones Rojas asks, who are our leaders stepping up to replace some of our losses, as in Stetson, Nolan? Kip, let's start with you. Who are some of the guys you think make sense as far as guys who could step up as leaders on this team and are going to be counted on to kind of help in that leadership role?
I mean, the guy that came back, the one that, we thought might go to the NFL, Cedric Van Pran, that's an immediate alpha in that locker room, regardless of offense or defense. He's a guy that's going to, command everyone's attention when he's talking. And I think they're going to lean on him a lot next season. I really, that was huge for Georgia, getting Cedric Van Pran back, one of the top 2-3 centers in the entire country. And I think he's, going to play a huge role next season. As far as defense, there's some younger guys out there for sure. But again, I think you look at the guys that stepped up in the big roles. You think, Kamari Lasser, like you said, Jamon Dumas-Johnson's probably going to be that guy that, he is not afraid to tell it like it is. One of the more enjoyable guys that, we got in interviews, which we got him all the time. It was interesting. Usually you get the guys that kind of give the robotic answers. The answers were, that everyone in the administration could feel safe knowing that there's not a single quote that anyone can take out of context or take anything from. But Pop, he was unfiltered all season. And, it was refreshing to always know that they're still going to send him out there, even though he's just being brutally honest sometimes. But also just the emotion that he speaks with when he's out there, just how passionate he is and how important it is for Georgia's defense to play to the standards that Kirby Smart set for him. He was definitely that guy for Georgia last season when after that Ohio State game, he let it all out there. He did not hold back talking about how they performed. And I think that you saw it from the outcome of that TCU game. They took it to heart in practice and made sure that, it was a different outcome. So I definitely think he's going to be a huge influence in that locker room this season.
The example I will always go back to with Jamon was after the South Carolina game. Remember, they win that one like 48-7, something like that. And on two different ends of where we were talking to players, Nolan Smith was on one end, Jamon was on another. And me and another reporter had asked to the two different players very similar questions about, you guys didn't pitch a shutout, but it was the backups that gave up a touchdown. Nolan and Jamon both took issue with that and was like, look, if you're on the field, you're a starter. We don't care if, you're a two, you guys see them as backups, but we count that just like it's us playing. And I thought that spoke a lot about Jamon, the fact that, look, that was Nolan Smith saying it on one end, and that's a guy that's been there, done that. Jamon was just going into his third career start, and he was saying a whole lot of the same things. I would expect Jamon to be playing a very similar role. And you think about that Missouri game, I think it was the Missouri game where you saw him on the sideline kind of getting his teammates fired up, not really happy with how they were playing. I think Jamon is an ideal and, probably the go-to answer, I would say, going into 2023.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody I talk to, there's several guys, but it starts with Cedric Van Pran. And, that's what I was writing about, when he came back. It doesn't not only are you getting an experienced player, but this is a guy that he has a locker room. He was very involved last year, but you get a guy like that coming back and lead by example. This is definitely it takes more than one, but you want to start with a leader. It starts with Cedric Van Pram.
Let's stay with the offensive line, and I'll throw this one to you, Rusty. There are a few different questions about specific guys that we're looking at going at the offensive line. What do you make of this group going into Tuesday, and what we'll probably see as they get in the mix? The players trying to earn a starting role going into the spring.
I think this is going to be the time that Georgia's going to do some things to kind of see where how much flexibility they have, how much depth they have that can play. Because the one thing is you're going to go against those number ones in practice at Georgia, and you're not going to see many teams like that during the season. So what better value for Stacy Searles to see his group versus that D line and those guys to say, hey, where do we measure up? Where are we actually at? I want to see if Xavier Truss plays some tackle. If Ernest Green can go at some point, if he winds up being a guy this season, they keep Mims at right tackle, keep Truss at left guard, or they move Truss to right tackle, move Mims to left tackle, and who plays that guard position. So flexibility there, with what they're trying to do. So the tackle position, obviously, a lot of questions there. Blasky's a guy that people kind of forget about sometimes, and he's getting some looks as well in the depth, and he's definitely too deep at some point. And can he play center? Could he play tackle? Michael Morris here from Jordan Harris. I was actually at Camden County last week, and he's a guy that I think can play. And Dylan Fairchild, they got some depth there. Where can they get these guys in? So it's kind of a good problem, but I think the question is going to be who is going to line up these tackles and what kind of flexibility does Amarius Mims go left or right? My personal opinion going into practice right now, and maybe we'll see tomorrow, is Amarius Mims is going to stay at right tackle for right now. We'll see where it goes. So a lot of things to be answered, but the good thing for Stacy Searles is they're going to be across from some dudes all spring that are high level, one of the best defenses in the country. So he's going to get good tape, and he's not going to have to wait to preseason. He's going to know where he's at and where what guys can go at the end of spring practice.
Probably going to be some very interesting mixing and matching over these 15 practices, no doubt.
Yep.
Kip, I'll throw you this one from Jordan Harris. Who is our leading receiver among the wide receivers? What do you expect to see among this group that's got a really interesting mix between some of the guys coming back? You got the 2 transfers from SEC schools, and you got some really interesting and intriguing freshmen coming in, the 3 they signed out of high school.
I mean, the only thing I can guarantee is whoever we predict it won't be. We're going into year 3 of whoever we thought was the wide receiver 1, just not playing a role in the a real big role in the season. So, I don't want to, I don't want to be the harbinger of doom there and pick somebody and then set them up. But I think you have to look at just what Dominic Lovett brings to the table as a guy that can kind of make a lot of different things happen. He could play in the slot, but he could also play outside, and I think that's going to kind of be key because when you ask the question, my thoughts just go to Lad McConkey and everything he did last season when they needed somebody week in and week out. He proved he could be that guy. Had some early on in the season, I kind of had the yips a little bit, but really overcame that and played a pivotal role in Georgia's second national championship season. But I really just love what Dominic Lovett brings to the table, and if he shows out in the spring, I think he could be a guy they move all around, whether it's XZ. I just think that even though he's not the biggest guy, like 5'10", 180, I just think that his ability to stretch the field and make big plays after the catch is just something that Georgia's needed in this offense for a couple years now. So I just think overall, that's a guy that you really want to see out there and see what he can do. And if he lives up to the billing, he could be that, that dynamic playmaker in this offense, regardless of who's at quarterback.
Question from our board from Buffalo Dog, who asked about Andrew Paul's health. Andrew talked to reporters before the Peach Bowl and sounded like he was very optimistic going into spring. And to me, he's going to be a really interesting I don't know if it's fair to say X factor, but just someone to watch coming into that room where that depth is so important at running back. And based on what we had heard going into fall camp, he was putting together a pretty good fall camp when he got hurt. So he's going to be someone for sure when we get out there. If we get to watch any practice, I want to get a chance to see Andrew Paul and see how he looks going into his redshirt freshman year.
I think they're going to take their time with him. He's going to do some running around, but I'm not expecting him to be in pads, bumping and thudding and those types of things. Yeah, he had a really good fall camp. Unfortunately, that thing happened to him, but it does. But I still think he's a little bit – he is definitely, from what I've confirmed, doing some jogging. He's not doing any type of cutting or anything right now yet, and that's still – he's still on the right time frame, so nobody get in panic mode there. Ideally, you want to think about June. He got hurt in August. So you think end of May, June, you start doing those cuts and those types of things, and you're able to do all the summer conditioning, and then you're ready for fall camp. So this is not like it's make or break for him, but you certainly I'm not expecting to see him taking any live reps this spring, but he is going. From my understanding, he's doing some jogging and those types of things, and that is right on. Not everybody's Adrian Peterson and get do a 6-month ACL recovery, which is super freaky. But from everything, he is right on target. He will do some light running this spring. Probably see him catching some balls or something. But as far as making cuts and doing those type of things, I'm not expecting that.
Yeah, that is one of those things, especially in spring ball. You want to be cautious. You want to work guys back because obviously the goal is to be ready once the fall gets here. Before we wrap this up, I want to go to each of us, and I'll start with Kip. What are you most intrigued by going into this spring? What do you want to see? What really intrigues you the most about Georgia going into spring ball?
I want to see the freshman edge rushers. I want to see what these guys bring to the table, because I thought that was kind of an aspect of, last year's defense that when Nolan Smith went down, they had to kind of change what they were doing a little bit and find other ways to affect the quarterback. And obviously, as Rusty mentioned, Michael Williams played a huge role in his first year. But at the same time, I think that's a chance for them to potentially get more production and just get better in that position room. And the talent they have there right now is as good as we've seen it. And, we know what they have in the inside linebacker room, what Glenn Schumann's done there. And we have some guys that we know what they can do in the secondary as well. I want to see if these guys can, really push these offensive tackles in spring. And I want to hear what the reports are in practice. Is Georgia having to switch up their lineup just to give their quarterbacks time to get the ball down the field? Those are the kind of reports that I know fans usually get mad at, but I don't think there is a way for you guys to cover it and not have the fans upset, because it's pressure against pressure. It's best on best. And so someone's got to lose the rep. Regardless of who loses the rep, the fans are going to be upset about it, and they're going to stress about it, and it's going to be an off-season, issue for Georgia. But that's what I want to see, because I think that's just, if Georgia's able to get into that backfield and have havoc plays behind the line of scrimmage, it makes life so much easier for everyone on that defense. It's kind of that. I mean, that's why edge rushers get paid the big bucks when it comes to the NFL draft, and why even a guy like Nolan Smith that missed over half the season has a chance to be a first round pick, because guys like that, I mean, you just don't have guys that explosive that often. So let's see what the next group looks like for Georgia.
Rusty, how about you? What intrigues you the most, or an area of this team you're really going to be paying attention to during spring ball?
I mean, it's I don't hate to be the easy answer, but man, it's quarterback, because if you look at the roster and then you look at the schedule and you say, man, if Georgia gets good quarterback play, I mean, we're sitting here, trying to plan where everybody's going next December again, because their roster is built. Their schedule is very favorable. A couple potential hiccups there, but it's going to come down to quarterback play, and we're all three going to deal with this. We haven't dealt with it in a while, but every single day, you know what's coming. What quarterbacks look good today? Who took the first reps? Who scored? And those types of things. I will address this. Craig Lawson asked a question. Will Bobo run the damn football? I think the one thing under Mike Bobo, and The one thing under Todd Monken that Georgia had an issue with last year was picking up short yardage. Georgia really at times struggled picking up that 3rd and 1, and a couple times they went for it on 4th and 1 and didn't get it, and they got to the red zone, and they went through a window there during the season where they kind of struggled inside the 5 with that. I don't think with Mike Bobo's short yardage is going to be a situation because they're going to bring a little bit more physicality there. Now look at a guy like Roderick Robinson and Branson Robinson and maybe even Kendall Milton. Those are bigger backs. So you expect with those guys to be able to pick up 1 yard. And listen, Todd Monken was one of the best offense coordinators in the last how many years, even at Georgia. And this guy will shred you up. But if there was one thing that kind of was a pattern, they did struggle a little bit on that 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, especially this year some at times. So I think with Georgia, you're going to look at some of those things, and they're going to be physical with that play there. And I think that's one thing that one change you will see with Georgia is they're going to put pad on pad a lot in the spring. I guarantee they'll work on that. And as they get into fall camp, the 4th and 1s will be a 3rd and 1 will be something that Kirby Smart probably spoke with everybody with. As you start picking apart a season where you had one of the best seasons in the history of Georgia football, you got to have something to work on. And I'm saying, bet you short yardage will be something to be a big focus this spring.
Rusty, what do you think having Tate Ratledge just have another year healthy? And it seemed like he didn't get his legs under him until later in the year, really. So as far as short yardage, it feels like that's going to be an area where it really helps us having him back. And I mean, he's a guy that's freakishly strong. So,
yep. I think Tate was not 100% healthy. And listen, that you start talking about a Liz Frank injury on a big man. The problem is it's weight bearing. So that's the issue with someone like Tate coming back. And I bet if we set Tate down, who, by the way, that does a podcast with Riley and Godey, and it was Real Talk Football or something, those guys do. It's funny to watch. And it's really refreshing to see guys, just sit back and relax and talk. But I bet you if we asked Tate right now, man to man, what he felt like going into, September last year, he'd probably tell you he struggled. And there was times they held him out of practice, multiple weeks in a row just to get him ready for games. So, Tate Ratledge came back this year. You're going to complete off season of him. And I think that's a great point, Kip. You see a guy that can move people, unless you see everybody, a lot of recruits that are like 9th graders or 10th graders that I personally know to come on to go on the recruiting visits. I always like to reach back out to them because of one common denominator is I cannot believe how big those people are. Like, where do those human beings come? And you see Tate Ratledge walk in, you see Xavier Truss walk in, you see Marius Mims walk in, and you see these guys, they're all 6'6", 6'7". It's just hard to believe that there's those type of humans, but that's what it takes to play at a place like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, to look like that. But that's a great point, Kip. Tate Ratledge is a guy that doesn't get a lot of publicity, but you want to talk about another guy that's kind of a leader and a guy that commands respect. Known Tate for a long time, known since his 8th grader. I know what he's cut from, and he's got a little of that juice in his neck too. He'll get into somebody's rear end at practice.
Since Rusty took quarterbacks, I would stick with what Rusty was just talking about, and I'd say just the offensive line is sort of the area I want to watch, is just where they kind of plug and play these guys. I mean, we could all sit here and write out 5 different lineups that could work, but it's about getting the right 5 guys together. I think it's going to be something that they really try a bunch of different combinations, see who fits best, and we'll kind of see what that looks like come G-Day, because it could be something where what we expect going into spring, that might not be what it looks like come April 15th. Well, to that point, we're going to throw in real quick a Georgia men's basketball minute. All I'll say is, as we record this a little bit after 12:30 on Monday, the transfer portal is open. And as far as I know, it sure seems like the Georgia Bulldogs are going to be ready for business. At this point, there have been no Georgia players go into the portal. I don't anticipate that's going to remain that case. When those guys are going to go in, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if about the time we sit down with Kirby Smart and company tomorrow, that maybe some of those basketball players' names just happen to go in at that time. But it's going to be something.
Who's the kid from Wofford? That's kind of the buzz, I guess, is everybo's after him.
Yeah, BJ Mack.
Yep.
BJ Mack's a guy. There's a few other guys, names that have been out there that I know one name that has not entered the portal that seems like Georgia could be in the mix for that I think would be a really big help at guard. So we're going to be watching that one. But it's definitely a very interesting time. And also to have this come in at the same time as spring ball. You just couldn't have it work out any better. To be doing this, we'll probably be watching some offensive line drills, and I'll get a message that somebody is going to try to come to Georgia. But we'll be all over it, and we'll be ready for it, no doubt. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode. Appreciate everybody who watched this live, who is listening to it after the fact. And be sure on Tuesday to keep an eye out for all our content. We'll be out there when Kirby Smart speaks. Also, the players we get to talk to after that. If we get a practice availability, we're still waiting to hear word on that. There will be a practice report. I'll do a VIP observation story as well. And that'll be the start of what's going to be a really busy few weeks as we go through seeing how much we get to really watch of this team, following what happens, especially once we get into these scrimmages later on in spring ball. But we'll have it covered. We'll be all over it, and we'll make sure you guys don't miss a second of the action as we watch Georgia and basically continue the countdown to G-Day on Saturday, April 15th. So we'll wrap it up right there. Appreciate Rusty and appreciate Kip for popping on. Appreciate all the good questions and appreciate you guys' support because we couldn't do it without you. So until next time, everybody take care.